Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. For my rental properties, I've used cozy.co, which was a Canadian company that was acquired by apartments.com. So my last two tenant turnovers, I've had a total of 4 in 10 years, but my last two, I used apartments.com. I have some friends who've used Zillow, and they were talking about some changes that happened to the platform. So I figured I know a pro. I reached out to Dana Dunford, the CEO of Hemlane, to ask, what are those changes with Zillow, and what do you think is good or bad about it?
Great. Thanks so much, Dion, for having me. So just so everyone here knows, I am Dana Dunford, CEO at Hemlane, and we do property management. So one thing we do is list rental properties on Zillow. We also do apartments.com, which you've used, Zumper, Trulia, HotPads, Mapper, all of them. And so we have a pretty good idea with working with them as partners, knowing one, which websites are performing, and two, why they've been changing certain requirements on their websites, as well as pricing on their websites, because pricing is very important to landlords who want to make sure that they can reduce their vacancy, gets a qualified tenant in there while also not breaking the bank. So let's go back to about 3 years ago. Zillow has always been the dominant player in the space for advertising your rental. And while it's fluctuated over time, and I'll tell you those numbers, we list out it here at Hemlane to 30 different rental websites. And we always find if you take all the leads, so let's just say, Dion, you've used Hemlane, you list your rental property on Hemlane and we shoot it out to apartments.com, Zillow, Zumper, all the websites. We find that 70% of tenants come through Zillow's network. And Zillow owns Zillow, Trulia, and HotPads. So those 3 websites account for 70% of tenants. Not 100%, but 70%. And so, or it's like 72%, something like that. But what we find is that is the most dominant player in the space. So it's very important for you to have some sort of presence on Zillow. 3 years ago, and this is my own personal opinion from working with websites, they had said, wow, other websites are charging to list your rental property on there. We have a lot of cost with doing rentals. Some of those costs are fake listings. We have to, take down any fake listings from some scammer. We're verifying now every single landlord on the platform. And then there's a lot of landlords, and I hate to say that, I've been one of them, who are untech savvy, who are asking a lot of tech support questions. If we're allowing people to advertise their rental property for free on Zillow, we have all of these costs associated with that. Why don't we start charging to list your property on Zillow? And so essentially they said, great, we are going to roll it out state by state that you have to pay to list your rental property on Zillow. So it started with Oregon. I think Colorado, don't quote me on this, but I think Colorado was their second state, and they went state by state and started charging for rentals. They even came to us at Hemlane and said, hey, you used to have a free feed to us. We're going to charge you as well. So they were charging everyone to list their rental property. Now, where some of you might not have known that is they allowed for the first rental property to be free, which actually kind of didn't make that much sense, because if you think about it, usually the fraudsters, the person, we call them fraudsters, the scam artists, they're usually posting like just one rental property. And so that's usually where most of their cost is. But they went forward with that. And so 2 years ago, they started rolling it out state by state and eventually got it to all 50 states, where all 50 states, they charged you to list your rental property. Well, when we started to look at the numbers, we even told our landlords using Hemlane to advertise their rentals, we have to pass this cost that Zillow is charging onto you. One, legally, they require us to do it. But then two, like we'd go out of business if we were to incur this cost. So we're passing this on to you. We were getting the same feedback that Zillow gets. What? They're charging for rentals? That's crazy. And a lot of folks just went to apartments.com, like you, Dion, went to the apartments.com, went to the Zumpers of the world and said, hey, they'll do it for free. Let me just list there. So then we started to see more leads and more of these tenants. They would go onto Zillow and say, hey, there's not as many properties here, but all these other rental listing websites have properties. And so we started to see this shift over the past 2 years, where some tenants were saying, well, I'm going to go to these other websites because they've got properties that are what they would consider like off market, like they're not even on Zillow. We're going to go ahead and look at these other websites. And Zillow, they're very smart. They actually listen to their customers. We have a lot of respect for them, by the way. They listen to their customers. They listen to the feedback and are like, fantastic. We still need to charge for some of this stuff, but we need to do it in a different way. And so more recently, we found that they've come out with a fantastic model I'm super big fan of, where they say, great, to list your property on Zillow, starting now, it was this year. So I think it was in June they launched it. You can list your properties for free on Zillow. And what I believe is tenants are all coming back to Zillow. They have a good user experience. So tenants are coming back to view the properties there. Companies like Hemlane, they've just started a strategy where they say you can also list for free. You don't have to pass on this cost. And then they said, if you want premium services, so you want our rent reports, you want data on how your properties are performing, if you want to get access to our rent collection features and things like that, you have to pay. But just putting your property out there to tenants is free. And so this has been a huge transformation. And I actually really like it. Coming from the outside where I don't work for them, personally, I think it's a win-win for everyone. It's a win for them where they have some sort of money they're making off these premium features. One of them is boosting your listing to the top of Zillow, which is huge value add. They're able to counter all the costs they have associated with verifying listings, with support. And then on top of that, as a landlord, it's a huge win for you because now suddenly you're not getting charged a significant amount to list your property, or what you consider a significant amount to list your property there. So it's a little bit about the transformation that we've seen working with Zillow and how they have recognize that rentals is a massive market for them. There's a huge opportunity there, and how they can work with landlords to provide the best experience for them as well as for Zillow, where it doesn't become a huge expense line item for them. It becomes something where there's a happy medium. They can make money off of it. Landlords can make money off of it. So that's a little bit about what Zillow's doing. So I think they're moving in a fantastic direction. We're excited to be partnered with them. That's a little bit more about what's going on with Zillow.
No, I appreciate that. And here's a perspective of the consumer, the person who was going to list, and why I didn't list on Zillow and I had chosen apartments.com until this very last one. My very last rental, I used Hemlane for the first time, which thank you very much. I had several qualified tenants. I had a lease signing within 6 hours, which for me it was very quick. So I might greatly appreciate that. So, but as a consumer, when I looked at Zillow, and I haven't had very much tenant turnover, so I really haven't had to think of it very much. It was, where's the free service? I do most of this myself, right? And so I was that person looking at it from that perspective. And Zillow said, oh, we're going to start charging. So as a consumer, I'm sitting here thinking, I list a property, and here's a quick little nugget for anybody who was paying attention to the fraudsters out there. Go to canva.com and add watermarks to your images. Yeah. It's not that they can't scam your property and use your address and try to find somebody that's silly enough to believe that the owner is out of town and they need to go and drill out the locks and put in their own locks or something like that. I've actually seen those correspondence with people looking for a rental, but it makes it more work. And the more work you make it for the person committing fraud, the less likely they are to choose your property. But when I list a property on apartments.com or on Zillow or through Hemlane onto those, apartments.com and Zillow makes a ton of money. Not from me.
Yeah.
Because they collect money for the applicants.
Yeah.
I had 12 applicants within hours of posting that property. Some were to apartments, some were to Zillow. So when I sat back as a consumer thinking, okay, so you are making money. A lot more money than my one rental. My one rental is going to spur. A lot of people are smart and they send a correspondence. What are your criteria? Is it still available? But some people just fill out the application before they've asked any questions, before I've interacted with them at all. And I know that fee is not going to be reimbursed to the people if they don't get selected. So to then see them adding a charge is why I would have looked at them all and said, nope, I'm not using Zillow, because they're charging for the one side that other platforms aren't.
Yeah. This is, Dion, it's so great to hear your perspective on it, right? Not being into talking to the Zillow team and hearing what they have to say. But I think it's so true. You will list on every single platform that is free before you do the one that is paid. And this is why it's beneficial now they're moving back to this free version, because I believe as a landlord, you want that, right? You want to be able to list for free because that's where the industry is, and they can still make money off of other things like qualifying tenants or other areas. So I think it's a good balance. I actually think this focusing not on making money off the tenants, but on the premium of like, hey, you want to boost it back up because you priced it wrong incorrectly, is probably a much better way to go. And it seems to be good for landlords too. One of the interesting things I find, it's good that you found someone in 6 days. One of the really interesting things,
6
6 hours,
Yeah.
hours.
Sorry.
One of the really interesting things I find with Zillow, or just with listings in general, how important it is for a landlord to really focus on those first couple of days and making sure you have it priced correctly. Because if you think about it, you're losing between, $50 to $150 a day for every day that it's vacant. Depends on how much your property goes for, but you're losing quite a bit for every day that's vacant. And what I find is if you list your property and you say, no tenants are inquiring about my property, maybe next week will be different. I guarantee next week is not going to be different. And your listing has fallen on apartments.com to the bottom. It's fallen on Zillow.com to the bottom. Like your rental is literally going to be more difficult to find because it's not considered hot anymore. And so it is really important to get that pricing right. Make sure you have it really out to the market and to everywhere, and try to condense that time that it is vacant. And make that a lesson. Like if within the first 5 days you have no inquiries, even the first 3 days, things aren't going to change, right? You need to reassess, is my pricing incorrect? Am I too restrictive? Like I've seen ads that are like, no pets, no this, no that, no, everything. And then you're restricted the number of people who are going to be looking at this place. And so really kind of think about the market. You can even see that on some of these listing websites. You can see all the properties in your area and you can click on them and it will say how many people contacted and how many applicants it has. And you can be like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. This property is really hot. There's a lot of people. How is it priced against mine, et cetera? And you can really understand that, but don't get too lazy in those first couple of days, because like you said, like the dream is to within 6 hours have someone right away. If you're waiting too long, what can end up happening is that you've fallen so much and it's really hard to get back up once you've fallen because of that.
And you nailed it, Dana. You have to watch the first couple of days if you don't get responses. And don't listen to agents. Thursday is not the best day to list a property. The day that it's available is the best day to list a property. Get it out there. I've had a lot of agents say, oh, well, you don't want to buy, it's the winter. I'm like, you mean there's no competition? Like that's when I want to be buying.
Yeah, no, exactly. I that is such a valid point. And also this fact of going to the websites and see, like, data can tell you anything. We have the data reports as well to say your rental is expected to go for this amount based on what we have in the past 3 months. But all you have to do is put yourself in the tenant's shoes. You literally sit there and say, okay, I'm a tenant on Wednesday night. I know I need to be out of my next place within a month. Let me go on to Zillow or Zumper or Truly or whatever website, Pad Mapper, what used to be super popular, not so much anymore. Let me go on there and let me check this area. I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. What's there? All that matters is you put yourself in the tenant's shoes and you do that and say, what is everything else going for? And how are they what's going to get them to click on my property and contact me for that showing? And what's really interesting is they say a lot of times you can sell tenants based on once they're there, and you could be like, wow, it's just incredible. There's a bus stop down the street to get downtown. But actually, there have been consultants that have gone into the multifamily space. So not the single family home and smaller space where we are, but the multifamily. And they've done research on tenants. And what they've essentially found with those tenants is that the tenant has most likely made their decision before they show up. They have Google Maps. They can see what's going on. They can check the street view and say, great, there's a Starbucks down there. That's fantastic. There's this cute little yoga studio I want. Whatever it is that's important to them. Really, when they come to that showing, they're verifying that the photos are what you say. The rooms are the size that they think. They are going through and making sure you truly are the landlord. It's not a scam. And just trying to get a quick sense and feel. But most of them, whatever you say in that showing will not make that much of a difference. They have already made up their mind before they go, which 10 years ago, before there was so much technology, was not the case. Tenants would go when you could really sell them on why your place is so much better.
But not today.
But a lot of times they're like, what's the price? What am I getting? And they can see all of that online. And so that's another thing just for you to be mindful of is like, sometimes people say like, oh, well, the showing is going to change it and that's going to sell the tenant on the place. Not really. They've already made those decisions. Most likely they've already driven by before the showing and made some sort of decision.
Well, thanks a lot, Dana. I appreciate it. I wasn't the person to talk about the Zillow changes, so I'm really glad that you came on here and did that. If somebody wants to reach out with follow-up questions, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, easiest way is actually email. Just email me, Dana, DANA, at Hemlane, HEMLANE.com. We work with about 17,000 rentals, so I kind of see through the markets and stuff like that, what's going on with advertising, what properties are performing, which ones potentially aren't. So if you're finding you're kind of like stuck in this rut with your rental property or something like that, I'm always willing to help.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.